Alright, boys and girls, today's lesson is lesson 7-5, and that is equivalent fractions using division. So basically what we've done in the last couple units is we found equivalent fractions using multiplication. So if you have the fraction 3/5 and you want to make an equivalent fraction using multiplication, that means you're just going to multiply it by another fraction, but it's a whole fraction. It's in this case it'd be 2 out of 2 or 3 out of 3, as long as it equals 1. Okay, as long as that what you're multiplying by really is a whole, you're just multiplying it by a whole that's broken into a certain amount of pieces. So in this case you'd get 6/10. 6/10 is equivalent to 3/5. Okay, these two fractions are equivalent. And you can go on and on. You can take this, multiply it by 2 over 2 to give you 12/20. You could take 3/5 and go 3 over 3 to give you 9/15. However you put it, all of these are equivalent fractions. Okay? They're all equivalent fractions. So you did that using multiplication. This is the easiest way to find equivalent fractions by using multiplication. Well, today we're going to work on finding equivalent fractions using division. And when you use division, you're actually simplifying it. You're making the fraction look smaller. It's not a smaller fraction because it's the same size because it's equivalent fraction, but you're making the numbers look smaller. So if you had something like 12/16, you want the 12 and the 16 to be smaller numbers, not smaller fractions, because no matter what, they're all going to equal the same fraction, the same amount, because you are looking for equivalent fractions. So my advice, or what I'm going to teach you, is you need to find factors of the numerator and factors of the denominator, then find the ones that match. Okay, so I know some factors of 12 are 2 times 6 and 3 times 4. And we're not going to use 1, and we're not going to use 12 in this case, because you don't want to use 1. If you use 1 and divide each by 1, you're going to get the same answer. You could do 12. We could do that. We'll do 12 here because it is a factor, but 1 doesn't work because, like I said, you're not going to find equivalent fractions. You're going to find the same exact fraction. So for 16, we have 1 and 2 times 8, and 1 times 16, and in the middle we have 4 times 4. Okay, obviously 1, we don't want to work with 1. Remember that, because if you do 12 divided by 1 and 16 divided by 1, you get 12/16, the exact same thing. Okay, so you could do them each by 2, because 2 match. 2 and 2. Okay, so you can go 12/16 divided by 2 over 2. So once you found that there are factors that will go into both 12 and 16, we'll circle them, you can then divide. I guess I should put the division sign here, because that's what you're doing. You're dividing them each by that number. Just remember, this still equals 1. Okay, 2 over 2 is 1. So 12 divided by 2 is 6. 16 divided by 2 is 8. So 6/8 is equivalent fraction to 12/16. Okay, also we had 4 and 4 in each. So you could do 12/16, and you could do divided by 4 to give yourself 3/4. Okay, the bigger of the two factors the bigger factor that you find that goes in both of them will make the simplest form. Okay, that means 3/4 is an equivalent fraction to 12/16 and 6/8, but this is the lowest form you could go. Okay, that means there's no other numbers that you can divide it by to make it any smaller. So, and also you should be able to tell that 3 over 4, there's no other number you can put in between them. So that's obviously the lowest form you can go. So when asking for the simplest form or the lowest form that you can go, you will take the biggest factor that's in each of them. Okay, if you're just trying to find another equivalent fraction using division, 2 and 2 work. So obviously you can't do 6 or 8, and 12 and 16 you can't, because 12 isn't in 16 and 16 isn't in 12. Okay, let me give you another one. And we may not get to your workbook pages much today because everything we're going over is what your workbook pages are about. Let's do 24 over 32. And we want to find the simplest form, so we want to use division. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to find all the factors of these numbers. Well, you have 1 and 24, 2 and 12. Whoa, let me start this over. You have 1 and 24, you have 2 and 12, you have 3 and 8, you have 4 and 6. Okay? Then for 32, you have 1 and 32, you have 2 and 16, you have 3, 4, you have 4, and you have 8. Okay, because 5 doesn't go into it, 6 doesn't go into it. Remember, cross out the 1, and 32 and 24 don't, 12 and 16 don't match, 6 isn't a match, 3 is not a match. So we have 2, we have 4, and we have 8. So by looking at these three factors that they share, which of these would produce the smallest form, the smallest, the simplest fraction? Okay, hopefully you know that 8 will, because 8's the biggest factor that they share. Therefore, if you divide either of these two numbers by 8, you'll get the smallest number. Remember, these are all the same size fraction, but we're looking for different numbers. So let's do 2, 4, and 8, and that'll give us 3 more equivalent fractions by simplifying. So 24, 32, if we divided each by 2, we would get 12 sixteenths. That's an equivalent fraction to 24, 32. Next one, 24 over 32, if we divided by 4 in each, will give you 24 divided by 4 is 6, 32 divided by 4 is 8. Okay, so 8, 6/8 is another, and notice that's pretty small, but we can actually go smaller, okay, by dividing each by 8. So 24, 32 divided by 8 equals 3/4. So that tells me that 3/4, 6/8, 12 sixteenths, and 34, or 24, 32 are all equivalent fractions. But we went from the bigger and went down to the smaller. Therefore, this fraction right here is the simplest form, is the smallest form you can get from 24 over 32. It doesn't get any smaller. Another way you can tell is by looking and saying 3 and 4, there's no number between them, and 3 can't go into 4 so evenly, so it leaves you with your simplest form. Alright, so I lied, and I guess I am going to open up the first page, because this is all about simplest forms, simplifying fractions. It says simplifying a fraction means, I'm sorry, and this is page, the next page you haven't done yet, but page 241. It says simplifying a fraction means finding an equivalent fraction with lesser numerator and denominator. Simplifying a fraction results in an equivalent fraction with fewer but greater unit fractions. Okay, fewer but greater means in this case you have 1/12, so you have a whole lot of unit fractions. When you simplify, you get the same amount but lesser unit fractions. Like if this were, let's see, 3/12 would be. This would be 3/12, and I know that 3 can go into 3 one time and 4, so it would be 1/4. You break it into fourths. Okay, so it says Maria. Hold on, let me get rid of this. Maria had 12 boxes of apricots. She sold 10 boxes. 10 of the boxes. Write the fraction of the boxes sold and lightly shade the 12th bar to show the fraction. Well, she sold 10 out of the 12, and then if I lightly shade them, I'll get 10 out of the 12. And then it says group the 12ths in 12ths to form an equivalent fraction with lesser denominator. Show the new fraction by dividing, labeling, and lightly shading the blank fraction bar. Okay. So another way you could do it is you could break these into groups of 6. Okay, and this would be 1/6. 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 And we learned that 5 of these, because remember, look right here, we're lined up with it. 5 of these would be shaded in. So 5 of the 6. So that tells me this is an equivalent fraction. Another way from what we just learned is you could take your 10/12ths, find out the factors in each, 1, 2, 5, and 10, and this would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and 12, and look at the ones that are equal. 1 and 1 we don't use, 12 doesn't go into both, 10 doesn't go into both, 6 doesn't go into both, 4 doesn't go into both, 3 doesn't go into both, 5 doesn't go into both, so that just leaves you with 2 and 2. And when you divide 10 by 2, you get 5. 12 by 2, you get 6. And if you look, 5 over 6 is pretty small. So that's another way of showing your the amount that they sold. If you're not a fan of using this, I still want you to try it so you can visualize it better. But if you just did the division way of finding the factors, you should be able to take 10/12 and turn it into 5/6 using the way we just did. So we're going to actually, because we're 11 minutes in the lesson, we're going to go over the workbook pages in small group. So make sure you bring your math, your activity book with you.